The moment I said that prayer, I didn't know I was about to lose her. Not because she stopped loving me, not because something went wrong between us, but because God finally answered me. And the answer wasn't what I was hoping for. It was the kind of answer that doesn't just change your relationship, it changes your direction in life. And I didn't see it coming. If you ever loved someone deeply, but felt confused when you tried to bring it to God, this story will feel too real. I didn't fall in love with her suddenly. It happened slowly, naturally, inside a church that already felt like home. Her name was Sarah, the pastor's daughter, and from the outside, everything about her looked like peace. Not the loud kind of peace people pretend to have, but the quiet kind that makes you feel like life is finally in order. At first, I didn't even notice her that way. We were just two people in the same church, same services, same Bible studies, same volunteer groups, same purpose. And that's where the problem started. Because when people share purpose, they start assuming they share destiny. We talked after service. We served together in ministry. We laughed at small things that didn't seem important at the time, but somehow stayed in my memory. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. That was the part that got me. She just lived the faith she preached. And slowly, I started noticing something I didn't expect. I was looking forward to seeing her more than I was looking forward to anything else in church. But I convinced myself it was normal. It was just friendship, just ministry connection, just familiarity. But deep down, I already knew it was more. Everything looked fine externally, but internally, something started shifting. It wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, almost invisible. When I prayed, I didn't feel the same clarity anymore. Not fear, not conviction, just silence. And I remember thinking, why does everything feel right, but feel quiet when I pray about it? That was the first moment I ignored something I shouldn't have. Because nothing looked wrong. And that's exactly how people miss spiritual direction. Not every silence means approval. Sometimes silence is invitation to pause. Over time, our connection grew. Not forced, not rushed, just consistent. We prayed together. We studied scripture together. We served side by side. And because everything around us felt spiritually approved, I stopped questioning if I was actually hearing God clearly. Even her father, the pastor, saw no issue. In fact, he encouraged our connection. And that made it more dangerous. Because when authority, emotion, and opportunity all align, discernment becomes harder to hear. I started assuming, if everyone sees this as good, then maybe it is God. But I didn't realize something important. Approval from people is not the same as confirmation from God. One night, I couldn't ignore the tension anymore. Something inside me felt unsettled. So I prayed differently. Not for blessing, not for confirmation, but for truth. And I said something I would never forget. God, even if it hurts me, show me what I need to see. That prayer sounds simple, but it opens doors most people are not ready for. Because truth doesn't always arrive gently. Sometimes it arrives as conviction you can't unhear. At first, nothing happened. But then, clarity began to build slowly. I realized something I didn't want to admit. I had been more emotionally invested in the relationship than spiritually grounded in it. Not because she was wrong, but because I was leaning on her presence more than I was leaning on God's direction. Then another realization came. I had been praying for God to bless something I already decided, not asking if it was His will first. And the hardest realization of all, I wasn't emotionally ready for the weight of what I was stepping into. Not because I didn't love her, but because love alone is not enough for direction. If you've ever confused emotional peace with God's approval, you already understand how dangerous that feels later. The final clarity came in layers, not in confusion anymore, but in understanding. I began to see something I ignored before. We were not being shaped for the same direction anymore. She was called to stability, local service, and long-term community ministry. I was being pulled towards something unfamiliar, uncertain, stretching. Not because one was greater than the other, but because they were different paths entirely. And the truth hit me hard. I had been hoping love would resolve the difference. But love doesn't always align destinies. Sometimes it reveals them. Telling her wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting, no betrayal, no anger. Just truth and silence. And that silence was heavier than any argument, because everything still felt like love, but it no longer felt like alignment. She didn't understand immediately, and neither did I fully at first. But deep inside, I knew something painful but necessary. If I stayed in what felt right emotionally, I would eventually miss what was right spiritually. So I let go. Not because I stopped loving her, but because I finally stopped resisting what I felt God was revealing. And that was the hardest obedience I've ever had to live through. Time didn't erase the pain immediately. It processed it. Slowly. And what I learned changed how I see relationships forever. Love is not always proof of alignment. Emotion is not always confirmation of direction, and peace is not always spiritual agreement. Sometimes God doesn't remove love, He removes confusion, so you can finally see clearly. Have you ever stayed in something that felt right emotionally, but unsettled spiritually? Most people ignore that tension, but that tension is often where truth is trying to speak. If this story made you reflect on your own relationships, don't ignore that feeling. Because sometimes God doesn't take things away to punish you. He removes them to protect your direction. And clarity always comes after surrender, even when surrender hurts.